Hello and welcome to another episode of SuperCoach Insider. My name is Ben.
And I am Chris.
And welcome to our Adelaide Crows team analysis, Chris.
It's going to be fantastic. We spent a hell of a lot of time collating stats, looking at teams, analysing how they play, and who's going to be great at SuperCoach.
Yes, and this is where everything comes to the fold and we get to tell the lovely community our thoughts on the teams specifically. So we go through the premiums. So the rookies, we're looking at draft relevance as well for those that are playing draft. Let's look about the value, Chris.
Yep, definitely about the value. Where you can pick people up in draft is really important.
And who to avoid. We're big on that too.
And things like true averages, where you don't really... so when you're looking at an average, an injury comes into play.
Yes.
What would their average have been if you take that injured game out? Are you getting value out of that?
Yeah.
Or are you getting value out of a role change? Or are they looking like the second part of the season?
New coaches, which is big this year.
Things like that really impact players moving forward and dictate, who's going to be actual value picks moving into SuperCoach 2020.
So many unknowns. And the thing that I found is lacking, Chris, is that normally teams are really quick to pump up their tyres, but I haven't heard too many hype articles yet.
It's been a very quiet off-season in terms of articles and things like that. So I'm a little bit...
Well, unless you're Charlie Kerr now.
Yeah, well, he's at like 4 or 5.
All right.
Dude, he just can't stay on the park.
He cannot.
But let's kick it in with Adelaide. So we
can't even stay on the stairs.
Jesus Christ.
Too far?
Absolutely.
All right, hit us up with...
So we like to go first through with a little bit of a team review. Have a look at any trends this year and also what they were doing last year. But we'll start off. They do have the round 14 bye, which is a favourable bye. So the first thing about Adelaide players, if you are selecting any, they have the best bye available. And the reason for the round 14 bye being the best is that, first of all, you can, if you like, sideways trade to any of the other 12 teams that aren't on the bye that week. So you've got that advantage. But also the way that players work, you're not going to trade to these players until after the bye.
Yep.
So if you're going to have them in your team, you're going to start with them. You're not going to trade them in around 8 or 9. So important to look at these players as players you would keep for the entire season. And so for that reason, Adelaide do have a very favourable bye. They start the season with 3 home games, in inverted commas. They play Sydney, Port, so there's a showdown in round 2, and then Brisbane at home. And then they go off to the G to face Richmond. So... the teams there aren't necessarily really easy. I mean, the Derby can be anything. The showdown produces mixed results.
But when you're looking at it, like Sydney, Lions, I guess, are becoming more challenging, but they do leak SuperCoach points.
Yes.
Then you have the Dons, the Saints, the Suns, the Dockers, Melbourne, Carlton. Like this is all before they hit round 11 against the Giants. So it's definitely an opportune moment for some of these players to do well.
Absolutely.
Or some rookies to get some really good games early on.
Yeah, fantastic. And I really think that there is going to be a lot of opportunity there because of their list turnover at the end of the year. And look, I suppose that was really brought off the infamous off-season that they had last year where basically the entire senior team cracked the shits.
Yep.
And it ended up with essentially the coach being sacked. So... it's going to be an interesting year for Adelaide. They've got a lot of... they had some guns come back last year in Brad Crouch and Brodie Smith, but they still only managed an 11th place finish, and most of it, in my opinion, is all to do with their ball movement. So they were very, very proficient. In fact, they were the 3rd in the competition for overall disposals. However, 6th in competition for contested disposals. What they would generally do is they would get they're terrible at clearances. They were ranked 15th in the league for centre clearances. So they would lose the centre clearance. It would go into their defence. They do have good defenders, intercept defenders. They've lost one of those in Alex Keith, but we'll talk a little bit more about him later. And they would turn the ball over at half-back, and then they would dominate possession across the half-back, trying to get the ball forward. Their problem was getting their ball forward, and their ball movement lacked. Their forwards were basically starved of football the entire year. There's one forward in their entire list that you would even call as maybe a premium.
Lynch?
In Lynch, yeah. Outside of that, there's really, really bare pickings because there's just no one there. So
not only that, they just wouldn't move it forward. They'd move it sideways to other midfielders, and they kind of chip it and try and share the ball amongst their midfield. And then all of a sudden they go forward, and then, whoops.
Between Laird and the Crouch brothers, the amount of times that they just chip it to each other and without any impact on the game was ridiculous. So I'm really hoping to see them change that, either get more effective moving forward or change the lineup and change the style of play. They were 3rd, however, in effective disposals, but 5th in turnovers. So that whilst they obviously controlled the ball quite a lot, they turned the ball over like it's going out of fashion.
Well, they're probably effective in that sort of 25, 30 metre range, and then the minute they went
right.
longer, they probably turned it over.
Yep. Unfortunately, also, their pressure was really far down. They were 18th for 1%ers for the year. So they're last in the league for...
Well, they did have Jenkins at that.
Which is... Yeah, that's... Sorry,
Jenkins.
Unfortunately, Adelaide, they just had a tough year. And I think that even though their list turnover, so they lost Cam Ellis-Yolman to Brisbane. Richard Douglas is unfortunately delisted.
Eddie Betts.
Eddie Betts obviously went to Carlton. Andy Otten retired. Sam Jacobs went to GWS. Hugh Greenwood went to the Gold Coast. Alex Keith went to the Dogs. Josh Jenkins went to Geelong. But they did have Billy Frampton come in from Port. So that was their only real list change.
Talk about a rebate.
Yeah. Now, fortunately for them, most of those guys are fringe players or players that were sort of at 19 to 22 players. They weren't necessarily first team players. They have the core of their list still together.
Getting older. Yeah. And in Eddie Betts and Jenkins.
And they do have some young talent coming through, which we'll talk about later. So I don't think that list changes are going to impact them too much on field. I don't think they're going to drop down and be a bottom four side. I still think they're going to be fairly competitive, but they've got a long ways to go. So we'll see how that goes.
That's interesting.
In terms of Supercoach perspective, hard to see anyone investing in midfield or forward stocks this year outside of draft formats, of course.
Yeah, I think Sloan, with the easier draw, he could be the one beneficiary. Not only that, like Matt Crouch has been hovering for quite a while, but he could rack it up in easier draws. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I am nowhere near going that in standard, but in draft, I can't see him dropping much value in draft.
Yep.
So Rory Sloan, I think will be probably the one with an easier draw if he doesn't get much attention. Then teams are starting to try and tag some of these rebounding defenders and some of these other positions now. Whereas Sloan had a good run last year, he got injured, but he still did average well. I wouldn't pick him in standard because I reckon he might still drop in price at some point.
Well, there's that, and there's also the fact that, and we'll get to this, there's just such that big gap.
And
even if he's averaging 110, it's not enough.
It's not enough.
It's not enough.
Even Oliver's on the fringe of like, hey, like Oliver.
Absolutely. Yep. So you might, and Laird, he'll get tagged in a game, he'll get injured in a game, he'll drop 50k. Sloan, yes. And we'll get to that. But we'll go from premiums down, starting with the defence. I think there's only really one true premium there, which is Laird, of course.
Yes.
And as predicted last year, when we did the same series, we said that the impact of Brodie Smith coming back will be a negative one. I didn't think it would be as much as 12 points per game, but it was considerable.
And I think he had a down year as well.
Well, the other thing that, and it's sort of, no one's really sure about this, but the real accumulators of the game really dropped off. So Laird's an accumulator. Yep. He actually averaged 3 less disposals per game than he did last year. But the year prior, but that's not really 12 points. So I think the actual impact of his disposals was a large part of it. So his effectiveness of his disposals is why he actually dropped in scores. He also obviously doesn't take any kickouts.
Yeah.
So even averaging 96 though, it's a fairly safe 96.
I think he played a bit more safe anyway. He didn't really take on as much, which could be why, like, if you just chip it to someone uncontested, you get less points.
I can't really see a reason for him to increase his output. I don't see, there's no extra disposals coming out of that back line that I can see. I don't see
my theory is that if the Crows are struggling, then he might actually do a little bit of improving. And I think the fact that over a couple of years, he's still not too old, which is good.
No.
And I think he could still get you between that 95 and 102 mark.
He will be guaranteed top 6 defenders.
But the one thing we did notice is that even the Suns were tagging Laird.
Yep.
And he didn't even do that well against a crappy tag. No offense.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be really interesting. Last year we saw a shift of just tagging midfielders to actually tagging these rebounding sort of players. However, Smith also had some attention. So it's going to be one of those ththings where Laird might do well. And the funny thing is that Laird was still very consistent, but he didn't have those 120 plus scores that he was used to.
Absolutely. And the positive on the flip side of that is he's only had 3 scores in the 70s in the last 2 years. So it's 2 years, and he's only those are his lowest scores. The 3 scores.
And I've seen him in a lot of sides because he is consistent.
High floor,
and he does have the last buy, which is definitely going in his favour.
And so I think is a very valid selection. I firmly in top 10 consideration.
Yes.
Without even considering that he may improve, and he definitely might. I just am a little bit more pessimistic about that.
Yeah, I think it's a buy structure that comes in his favour,
Yeah,
to be honest.
He's I don't think his value, but you'd pay 525k for Laird.
Yeah.
You'd pay for that during the season.
Because you're probably going to want to get him in at some stage anyway.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
The one thing about Laird, though, is that you may not want to start him because he's always going to be relatively cheap.
And he's not going to hurt you so much.
He's not going to hurt you. You're going to be able to pick him up sometime during the season.
It's like a Stewart or a Rich where they'll drop some 80s and 90s and he'll be around the mark.
Yep. For draft purposes, I think Laird's an awesome pick.
Yep.
I think that if he's your number one defender, then you're going all right there.
Yeah. And averaging 96.8, there'll be people ahead of him. So you'll be able to wait, you'll be able to get your other positions, pick up a Laird even as a D1, and you'd be happy.
I'd be so stoked happy with Laird at D1. Yeah. And he rarely misses games. Someone like Whitfield, who's obviously got fantastic output and is probably going to be the number one defender.
Zach Williams.
They both miss games,
Whitfield
right?
Will be forward.
Laird is just the most solid. He's going to be there every week. He's not going to miss a beat. He's got a great buy. So I think for standard, he's a very, very tough to leave out of any side.
Yep.
But there are value considerations around.
You'd be able to get Laird, I reckon, your D1 and probably even your fourth or fifth pick.
In draft?
In draft.
Absolutely.
Easy. If you got him in your fourth or fifth pick, you'd be
huge value.
You'd be laughing.
Yep.
You could go 2 mids, a forward, and then bang.
But I do think that he will be a popular SuperCoach pick. He's not going to be exactly unique, but I think he might only be in about 20% sides.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I think last year he would have been in easily over 40%.
He was in a lot.
So yeah, it's pretty crazy. I do rate him. There are other options that I'm looking at, but for his price, if you've only got 5, if you don't have enough to get up to a Whitfield in your setup, then Laird's a very valid D1. I'd be happy with that.
Okay.
Smith he held defender status, even though he generally pushed up to a wing. He actually had a great back end to the year, average 93.66 post buy, which is actually slightly higher than Laird's last 10.
Yeah, and I think I moved on Smitty.
Yeah, I think everyone did. I moved Smitty to Laird.
Yeah, I think I did too. I did too.
But it's like, it was so like I suppose it cost me a trade, but I think it worked out 0.06 difference in average between the two.
It hurt.
That included a score of 65 in round 15, and he actually averaged 88 for the entire year. So had a slower start to the year, obviously coming back from injury, really worked his way into it. He could be considered a decent option. He is the 17th ranked defender, but I think for 40k you just pay extra to get to...
Yeah, don't do it.
You just pay extra to get to Laird, right?
Don't do it. He's not going to break out and go 100 or 95s.
Yeah.
He's shown he's a good 88 average, and draft purpose, yes. Standard, no.
He's also prone to just the occasional stinker in there. And
he gets attention.
Yeah. And he had 7. So even regardless of the fact that he averaged 88 for the year, he had 7 scores under 74. So he's got the potential to be a bit of a yo-yo, which means you can pick him up during the season if he's...
He's a poor man's Daniel Rich.
Basically, yeah.
Basically,
I think
quicker.
I think decent in draft squads. Look for him. I think you could probably get him at about a 90 average, so slightly more than what his average is, as maybe a second or third option, depending on where those draft picks are falling in your league. So,
and depending on where he plays in JLT as well.
Yes,
I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah. I want to see him on the wing, because when he was on the wing, he was pushing forward and kicking goals.
Yep. And
it was really evident he had a lot of impact from the wing. I prefer him on the wing as opposed to behind the ball.
Yeah, but do note that he will be competing probably with Seedsman and Seagull Atkins.
Yep.
For that wing kind of role.
Definitely. Now, next one, obviously, Millerer. He picked up defender mid status and his 402k. He was sort of a breakout contender last year.
Overhyped.
And
he's also the Mills of 2019.
Well, the first 4 games of the season, he averaged 95.5, so it was completely justified.
Injured.
Then he got injured, missed 5 games. So he missed blah, 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 blah. He got injured in round 5, missing the next 4 games, and then faded into SC obscurity, averaging 67.5 from round 5 onwards.
Yep.
That is insanely bad.
But that happens, though, once you stunt your growth. Even like a Jared Berry. A Jared Berry was on fire, and then you get injured, and then it's really hard to keep that momentum going.
I'd say,
or someone overtakes you in the role that they're doing, like, well, they're doing well in this role, so we'll just put you in this other role in the back pocket or whatever.
Now, he's a pick that has hugely high risk, but also really high reward.
Yep.
He has potential to be a top 10 defender.
He does.
If he can tick all the boxes, and he's got the talent. I think everyone can agree when you're watching Millerer play, 100% has the talent. The issue is not talent at all. It's just his body and getting it right and his role. So those are two things that need to happen. I highly doubt I'll be looking at him as a starting option, but he could be someone you look to upgrade to early.
He's on my watch list, particularly in JLT. Like, I'm watching him. I like him, but I'm not... At 400k, it's one of those ones that if it fails, and we've seen it fail,
screwed.
like you've seen your Withertons, you've seen your Mills, and you've seen your Millerers and stuff from last year. All these options fail. I mean, even to an extent, you're looking at your Rockcliffs and your other midfielders that failed. So for 400k, it's you're picking them to make it, and 9 out of 10 times they don't make it.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe not 9 out of 10. That's a bit harsh.
No, I think it's probably more accurate.
Yeah.
I think that it's a very, very risky pick and stand. I wouldn't be touching him. However, draft is going to be fantastic.
Draft is so good value.
Because he only averaged 74. He's a great player. You might be able to pick him up as your last defender.
You could pick him up as your last defender. And picking them up, when it gets around that 80, like low 80 averages, you could bang on Miller. Easy. 83, 84 average, you could pick him up and have that possible upside.
And also
I'd do it.
that dual, that DPP swing in draft is really valuable. Being able to plug a hole in your midfield or your defense when needed, I would definitely recommend as a pick if you can get him late for value. Don't overpay for him.
Yep.
But if you can pick him up at, say, I reckon an 80 average, if he's that's where
82,
he's sitting.
I reckon
like that.
just before he goes. I need to listen back to these later because last draft, Chris stole every single person that I wanted. Literally about three picks. So it was in the same round, but 3 picks before I went, he picked my player 8 times.
Winners are grinners, mate. Winners are grinners.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
All right, now onto the midfield. Obviously, we did touch on Sloan. Had a tough year, averaging 103. However, he did get injured on 35 in round 11.
Yes.
So his true average was 106.24, which is decent.
Yes.
And he had some bloody brilliant games.
Not only that, if you take out that 35, Chris, he averaged 113.6 from round 1 to round 17.
Absolutely, yeah, 113 in the first 16 rounds. I can't really see Sloan, though, being that 110-plus player, and that's what I said earlier. For that reason, he's not in consideration for me in a starting squad spot.
Correct.
I can't see him being... If he's top 10, he's 10th.
Yeah.
You know, he's not going to compete with the top dogs this year in the midfield.
That's
so
fair.
he's someone that you'll want to upgrade to. Unfortunately, with the round 14 bye, it makes him hard to upgrade to before that. So he might be a last midfield upgrade.
I also wonder what the captaincy might do to him. Just quietly, the team role instead of the Sloan role. It's interesting, but with Sloan, you know you're going to get the high ceiling, and that's where his value comes in, particularly with draft, not so much with standard. Standard, it is there because he could blow you out.
It's the VC option, right?
The VC option.
He can just go big. He just gets big.
Scores of 129, 138, 140, 155. He's always had a big ceiling. So if, as a VC, if you have a nice, sturdy captain option, you could throw a VC on Sloan, and if he goes big, then you're laughing.
The issue with Sloan, of course, is he tends to get shut down.
Yeah.
So if opposition taggers, they do target him because they know they can shut him down, and he worked out a very, very
He got
bad
tagged
score.
a little bit, though. He worked through that.
He was working through tags a lot better this year.
Better in
I'll give him that.
2019 than previously.
Absolutely.
So a small tick. Little baby.
A little one.
Baby.
And of course, as a draft option, not bad as your second mid option or maybe third.
If you've gone elsewhere, you'd be
Yep.
able to pick him up third round, I reckon, easy.
And you'd be looking at that 105 mark. So again, you've got a little bit of value out of it because
Yeah.
I do think he's probably in that 105 to 110 range. Again, very good for a vice captaincy option in draft because you always want to have a backup there if you do play captains in your draft league.
I agree.
All right, Matty Crouch.
Yeah, the burn man.
The burn man himself.
M. Crouch.
This is Matt Crouch in a nutshell. So some days he'll get 40 disposals and get 150. Some days he gets 40 disposals and gets 95.
Yep.
There is no way that I can justify ever picking him again. He's just... It's for SuperCoach reliability. The scoring, it's too uncontested. He also has recently shown that he's got a propensity towards soft tissue injuries, which is also great.
And he also doesn't get much time on ground.
Yes.
His history of time on ground is in the 70s. Even this year, 75% time on ground. You're looking at elite ball users, the ones, even you're looking at Paddy Cripps has now gone up to an 89% time on ground because he pushes forward. He's useful. Matty Crouch, 75% time on ground.
Yep.
You cannot score
he could
110
be
to 115. He could be. If he was on the ground more and he used the ball better, then he could be.
It's their game plan.
He could be.
And it's how he's used. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Adelaide were 15th in centre clearances.
Yep.
Now that's having Brad Crouch, Matt Crouch, and Sloan for most of the year. Like It's incredible. So they've got to work on their stoppages. He's got to be more contested inside.
Yep.
He did get injured on 51. I remember it was like 5 minutes into quarter 2. He was actually absolutely killing it.
50, yeah, he's on 54 around 8.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then so his true average is actually 106.44. So it wasn't a terrible year for Crouch by any stretch. And
No.
if you're like me and you basically had to keep him for the entire year.
It was bad if you picked him in your starting squad.
Yeah. He just wasn't the pick that we wanted. He wasn't the 110 per game pick, unfortunately, that ended up being. But I don't think he's going to be in many teams this year. And again, he'll be one that you could probably upgrade to if he's showing some form.
Yeah. He does have a good ceiling, though. He had 6 scores of 118 plus. So he had a 134, a 138, a 161. I think his first round was actually one of the better ones. And I was like, oh no, what have I done?
Yep. Absolutely.
Another JLT trap, though. He went big in the JLT. First round, awesome, just like Cornelio. And then
it went like 138 in round 1 or something, didn't he? Or something? And I was like, yeah, boy, yeah.
I know, same as Cornelio, went 140. And I was like, what have I done?
Now moving on, obviously the brother of Matt, Brad Crouch, and look, credit where credit's due, because the first thing I have to say about this, Brad played the entire season, and we wrote him off saying there's no way that he plays every game, blah 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 blah.
I don't know if I was that.
So,
I don't know
tip
if I
of the
was.
old cap, sir.
Don't know if I was that harsh. Definitely credit where credit's due. It was more the risk as far as how much money is he going to make, what's he going to average.
Yeah,
you know, I couldn't see him averaging over 100, which he didn't. So it's kind of like,
well.
For that, we did say, though, that
there was some stupid stat that he's the only person ever to average 30 disposals in a season and not average over 100.
Correct.
Like, that's insane.
But we were big on, if you do get him, just know that you're going to have to move him on.
Absolutely.
Because he won't be a keeper, and he wasn't a keeper.
Yep.
And I think that was the stance that I took.
And I still think that there's probably still injury concern there anyway. Just because
I'm leaving him in standard. I'm leaving him in draft. I will let someone else, and I wish him all the best. I will let someone else take that risk, because I would much rather go a Matt Crouch, who actually has played for the last couple of years. I'd rather go a Sloan or a Laird, or someone who has a little bit of durability, and I will leave Brad Crouch. And I'm sure he's a great player and he racks up, but for those injury concerns, what's good one year may not be good for the next.
And like I said, it's better just to let someone else take that risk. He's not going to burn you the other way, right?
If you love them, let them go. Let them go.
There's no way he turns around and goes 110 average and completely burns you for the year, right? Like, is that actually going to happen? I don't know about that.
I doubt it.
All right, moving on. As I said, the only forward premium that is worth noting is Tom Lynch of Adelaide, the Adelaide variety. He actually averaged 92.8 over his first 10 games before succumbing to injury, and the last 6 games only managed to average 71.16. So I think there's a little bit of value in there. Again, I think it's probably too risky for standard selection.
Yep.
But at 459k, unfortunately, it's just that there's so much other value around that price point that I don't think he's going to compete with those other guys in that bracket. Could he be a top 10 forward? Maybe.
I think the fact that they have lost some of their players as well, I can't see. He's a link player. So at the moment, it's like, who are you linking to?
Another reason why their ball movement suffered. When he went down, all of a sudden, they really struggled.
And I actually really think Lynch is so undervalued and so underrated, but who is he linking to? So I can't see him going up in score when I think there's going to be people turning it over before it even gets to him trying to link that chain.
Well, I think that there'll be a lot of fresh faces there, and we'll get into that.
Quick question, Chris.
Yes.
Rory Atkins. I did hear on the Jock Reynolds podcast that they were talking up Atkins as a possible
breakout potential.
Possible breakout contention. And so basically they would have to be referring to the Lockie Hunter 2.0.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
He's the biggest up and down player that I've ever watched. I had him in draft 2 years running.
We said multiple years ago he gets, I think it was 50%, oh no, was it 30% of the time he gets 100, but then 40% of the time he gets under 60.
Yeah, it's literally he fades in and out of games like it's going out of fashion, and I can't deal with that.
He's consistent.
It's consistently bad.
No, he's consistent as in he's up and down, but even this year he had 10 scores under 70.
Yep.
10 scores. So
I can't see
half the scores under 70.
Look, he will get a substantially increased role. I think he might have more time on the wing than he's played forward before.
But who would you have on the wing? Would you rather have a Smitty? Would you rather have Seedsman? Or would you rather have like an Atkins? I think Atkins is like wing half forward.
Well, I think he will basically replace Richard Douglas. So Douglas's minutes that he was getting,
not many,
will just go straight to. No, he played considerably last year, and there were games where he played really well.
I actually
kicked a few goals, won a couple games for him.
That'll be next podcast. I don't mind him. I value him.
I do think that there's a chance that he'll increase his output to be anything top. No chance.
What do you think?
I think the risk is far too high.
What do you think the max he averages?
85.
Yeah, I was going to say 87 max.
Yeah.
Nah. Oh, he's
again, top end great, bottom end terrible.
It's the consistency, and he's a poor man's Lockie Hunter.
So draft value. He's
getting the sloppy seconds on the chip hunt.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, he's a seagull.
Now, of course, the rucks situation has changed. Rob really burst onto the scene. So Riley O'Brien burst onto the scene last year.
Moneymaker. Did you get him?
Yeah, of course, yeah. 135k. Made everyone about 400k. Was fantastic. Obviously, was huge when Sam Jacobs was there. They actually played together. There was one game they played together. Both of them scored really badly. So he does need to be the number one ruck, and he will be by the look of things.
Yes. Don't mess with the good thing.
I do anticipate his numbers to hover around that sort of 95 to 100 mark. I don't think Rob's the answer to competing with the 130 averages of Gawn and Grundy. I don't think you're saving money by going Rob. So unless you're doing that, I don't see the point in getting Rob, in my opinion. But
okay. I agree with you somewhat.
Probably too early in his career to make that prediction.
I agree with you somewhat. I think his ceiling's definitely there. He's shown the ceiling is huge.
I think he got like a 170 or something, didn't he, during the year?
Huge.
Something like that.
But he did tailor off.
Yep.
And it kind of reminds me of Nankervis, how Nankervis tailored off. And everyone's like, oh, he'll be fine. Another preseason, he'll build his tank.
Yep.
Not necessarily, because then what did Nankervis do? He hovered around the same mark. So I think, yes... Rob could actually go to another level.
Yep.
And could go 110. However, he's still not going to be top 2. And even then, you got to, tailor those expectations on not everyone goes up.
Yep.
And we say that every year. Not everyone goes up in average. Everyone just assumes, everyone's going up. But for everyone that goes up, someone must come down.
Well, I think he's a great draft option. I think he's a draft option with potential and value in the pick. If you take out that 60 game where he was sharing the ruck duties with Sam Jacobs, his average is actually 97.3. So I consider him as someone you can pick as your ruckman, but after all the big ruckmen have gone through, usually, Gawn, Grundy, Goldstein, all the big names go through, and then
181 was the one you're thinking of, Chris. So he had 120, 123, 149, 181.
Yep.
Big ceiling, and from round 12 to 18, he had a 7-round average of 116.5.
Yep.
So. But can you sustain it?
Yeah. And our big draft strategy for the last couple of years has been if you don't get a high enough pick to get a Gawn, Grundy, or a Goldie.
If you don't get Gawn, Grundy, or
leave
Goldie,
the rucks.
Leave them.
Don't even bother drafting a ruck because there's always going to be someone who's got a decent averaging ruck.
You can pick up a Lysette. You can pick up so many options. It's
Lysette should be really good this year.
Yeah, I reckon Lysette. I actually put Lysette and probably Rob/Nick Nat in the top 5. I reckon Lysette might sneak in at 4. To be honest.
All right. Now let's get on to the real talk, the rookies. Let's get into that action because there is going to be some movement in Adelaide, and it'll be interesting to see how it works. However,
huge opportunity.
With their new draft picks, there's probably not much relevancy in what they did in the off-season.
And if they're relevant, they're too expensive.
Absolutely. So their pick 6 was Fisher McCasey. He's a key position utility player. Basically a swingman, and his teammate who's picked at 28, Josh Worrell. They're both swingmen, so they'll likely start in defence. But I'm going to predict that they'll stay in the sandful for most of the year.
If they're swingmen, I wonder if they live together. Oh, a zinger!
What a zinger! Such an idiot.
Sorry. Welcome back.
No, that was good gear.
Welcome back.
Now, so other picks of note. So the only one that I think has a really good chance of playing this year, and potentially early, was their second pick, Harry Schoenberg, who seemed to be the best local talent available at the pick. I think it was pick 24. Doesn't look to be a spot early for him because I think guys like Patrick Wilson and Ned McHenry will be the guys that actually get the first dibs at that mid-time. They didn't really get a look in last year. And these fringe positions are available with the departures of Greenwood, Douglas, and Cam Ellis-Yeoman. So
I've heard a lot of hype on McHenry.
I think McHenry is going to probably play round 1.
I think he is the one, and I think as far as pre-season, I think as everything's going, apparently, rumour is he's McHungry. He is so keen.
Oh, first punt of the year. Yeah. That was good year.
He's hungry.
All right. Now, back to Schoenberg. Before I get on, we will touch a little bit more on McHenry. So Schoenberg averaged 27 disposals, including 10 kicks, 16 handballs, 5 tackles and almost 6 clearances per game in the under-18 championships. So he's that inside midfielder that they really lack. The guy that's actually going to clear the ball for them. So I do want to see him sometime this year. I just don't think it'll be round 1 unless he has like a sparkling JLT, smacks everyone off the park.
Why are you yelling?
What? No. Why are you yelling? Another one to watch, who is rookie price, but obviously not a rookie, is Ben Crocker. So Ben Crocker was a rookie listed after being delisted from Collingwood. Look, never really lit up the place, but he's actually cheap. He's 152k. He probably starts round 1 with no Eddie Betts. And I think the other factors will have people like Chase Jones, who we'll touch on shortly, move into the midfield, which leaves a big hole in the forward line. So I think Crocker probably plays round 1. And at 152k, at least he's going to be a warm body. But, I mean, his best average over 10-game series was 45.8. So he's not someone he's more expensive. He's probably not going to have to value. But keep an eye on him in the preseason because he could actually make an impact at Adelaide. The other one, of course, Ben Keys. Unfortunately, he's 266k. So just a little bit outside of the price you want to pay for him.
Don't do it. I do wish him well, though. He's an inside midfielder. And the problem is that there wasn't a role for him in Brisbane. They tried to play him in other roles, and he could not adapt to other roles. And that was the issue. Whereas, McCluggage and... not McCluggage. Beast. Beast. Yeah. Reece
Matheson.
Matheson.
Yeah.
He could actually adapt to different roles, whereas Keys, he just could not adapt. He is what he is.
I think that Keys is basically Cam Ellis-Yolman.
And
so I think that there is potentially a spot for him in the starting 22 next year.
Yep.
Off the bench, I think he won't be a starting midfielder, but I think he might be in their best 25 right now. So,
but not relevant for draft or standard.
No, probably not.
No.
Just the awkward price. If he's under 200k, you look at him.
No stability. He's one or two bad games away from out. Catch you later.
Now, a very interesting rookie that I'm seriously looking at, mainly because of his price, and I believe he will start round 1, is Billy Frampton. So as mentioned before, is the only real positive of the trade scenario. Billy Frampton is basically a ruck forward, and he has played that way in the SANFL fairly well. He's 165k. Didn't really get a look in at Port Adelaide, obviously with their ruck contingent over that way.
Yeah. Who's going to play the second? You have Tex Walker, but who else is there?
So like last year, what they did was, so obviously Josh Jenkins was that guy, but now he's gone, so that role is definitely there. But what they did was they played Tex Walker, Andy Otten at stages, basically just to bump into the ruckman so they wouldn't get just an easy hit out to advantage.
Yep.
And it worked terribly. Again, they lacked heavily from clearances, and that's one of the reasons. So I do think they'll try and address that with playing Billy Frampton, and they'll probably go into the season with a 2-ruck strategy.
Yep.
So I think Rob and Billy Frampton will play together. So just something to keep an eye on. At 165k, it's unfortunate it's not rookie priced. It's not basement rookie priced. Not sure what he can average. I will need to see more information in the JLT, obviously, to go through that. And by the way, I don't even think it's called the JLT. It's called something else this year, but whatever.
Hey, it's not AFLX, so happy days.
Yeah, that's it. So I do think that will be a thing. Unfortunately, he's not ruck forward for SuperCoach. He's only a forward.
Yeah, that hurts.
Which does hurt because he would have been locked in if he was a ruck forward.
Hey, if you're playing fantasy, go nuts. He'll probably get DPP, so...
so that's most of the rookies covered.
Not like we condone that thing.
Yeah. Preseason watch, Shane McAdam was one that was on everyone's highlight reel last year. He's a bit of a high-flying mark, but unfortunately a low-position player. So I would like to see... he might have potential this year, obviously, with the movement in the forward line. He might actually get a game round 1 or at least be in the mix. So someone to watch there. Breakout contenders, I've got here Darcy Fogarty. I think that he is absolutely awesome. Whether he can maintain a level and be consistent is his issue.
Yep.
But he breaks games open with his kicking. So
I think can he average you 80 to be draft relevant?
Well, I don't think so.
No.
Because his lows are too low.
And
he's got too low lows and highs.
I just criticised Pistol being like, hey, you got the first, his highs are highs. And you just said his lows are too low.
Exactly right. But I do think that he's got a potential. Like, if he pulls it all together this year, the role's going to be there for him and the potential is there.
I think he'll be great for the team, but I don't think he'll be SuperCoach relevant.
Chase Jones, I also am very high on, 271k as a forward. He played 8 games last year and averaged 50, playing mainly forward or half forward. This year, he's going to be in the guts. Yep. I guarantee you he'll play that high half forward and in the guts role. He's killed the time trial this year, absolutely smashed it.
Yes.
So he's one that I think they want to get midfield time into, and it's
Would
just a matter
you
of time.
start him in standard though?
Oh,
Because that's a risky move.
it depends. If he lights up the preseason,
Yeah, fair.
there's every chance that at 271k,
That's fair.
I take a risk on him.
Yeah.
I'd rather take a risk on him
But what would
than Hill.
What average would you need?
80K extra.
What average would you need to get out of that then?
Well, I think that he's probably going to average somewhere between 80 and 85.
Okay.
And I think that is enough to, he's going to make enough money to be able to be worth it.
Okay.
But
Hopefully
it all depends on the role that he gets, and we need to watch the preseason for that.
So watch the preseason. Roll's good.
But
hopefully, you're hoping with their soft start to the year, maybe
Absolutely.
he will get a couple of good scores and up the price.
I think that he's one to
Okay.
invest on for keeper leagues. I think if you're going to, in draft, he's going to be very relevant as your last forward. Chuck a Chase Jones in there.
Or bench option. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll get him. No one will be looking at him, and I think he's very much value.
Dirt cheap. Speaking of dirt cheap, Chris.
The one player who I think should be in consideration for everyone's side, regardless of who you are, is Tom Doody. I think his figures speak for themselves, but we'll recap. He's 273k defender. He will definitely break out. He sort of broke out in his rookie year. Averaged 82 in his first year. Busted his ACL in his first game back. So that's why he's got the really cheap price. But I think the sky's the limit. I think he could probably average somewhere between 85 to 95. He can be that guy, is that intercepting defender that manages their backline, because Alex Keith is now gone as well.
I think with that, I think the bull will be in their defence.
And Andy Otten.
I think their ball in defence will be a little bit more. They'll have a little bit more ball coming into defence.
Yep.
So I think as an intercept defender, I think the points are definitely there.
Yep.
But my only concern is that if Keith and stuff's gone, Keith didn't exactly score that well. So you're looking at him to intercept and then get those points just purely from intercepting, or is he going to have to lock down a little bit more? Because it's not really locked down tight.
The consideration is that, yeah, exactly right.
So
he's not that type.
Who does that?
Well, Talia does that, and he will do that forever.
Yes.
So that's his only role.
He's
However,
getting old.
So we will need, the one thing we will need to watch, obviously, is does his role change in the preseason? I don't think it will. No. I think you'll see him come in the preseason, just going to be taking intercepts, and I'm hoping for a high 80s average. But I think that even low 80s is still value enough to pick him in your side.
Well, even Darcy Moore got like an 80 and he still made you money. So
look, you'll be able to make enough money to upgrade to an Uber Premium, or he'll be a keeper or a D6-7 towards the season's end.
Don't say keeper. No.
Could be a keeper.
Nah, not going to be a keeper.
If he averages low 90s,
not going to be
last
a keeper.
upgrade.
No.
I don't know.
Move him on. It's going to happen.
Well, either way, it doesn't matter. If he doesn't end up averaging what you want him to, you can just move him on. But he's made enough money. He's cheap enough. You can take a risk, and I think that most people should be looking at him or a type like him at his price.
He is the better risk because most people are comparing him to like Robertson, right? Whereas Robertson, he probably will have to lock down if he's not freed up. So that's another one to watch.
Well,
Plus,
I don't know if that came back last year.
Well,
so,
then he came back, and then all of a sudden it's like, played a game, and my heart, he didn't play last year, but there's no guarantee on. He might play a few games, and then something might be a real tough game. Next minute, his heart's elevated, and let's not take a risk, and that's you done. You don't know with Robertson, and he has a great scoring potential when he's free. But now you have your Wilkies, you have your Webster, and you have a few other people.
There's a few coming back
that could take the role, and if they do that, then Robertson's not going to score that well.
I think Robertson still might be worth the risk, but something we'll touch on in the St
He's worth it because he can downgrade or whatever he is.
Again, could be a keeper. These two guys are guys that you pick at 270k with the hope that they may be a keeper. But worst case scenarios, they're a very high chance to make you enough money to upgrade to an Uber Premium.
Or they at least play like 8 to 10 rounds.
Yeah. And they're going to score well while doing it.
Fair.
That is Adelaide wrapped up, my friend. I think we went all right.
Adelaide in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and do keep tuning for each day. We're going to try and release a podcast essentially each day.
We will be.
Possibly more than one a day. You'll just have to keep your eyes and ears open. And until then, we'll catch you next time.
See you later.
See you guys.
Bye.